$180 million. 98% positive reviews on Steam. 8 million copies sold. By all logic, this game should not exist. It is a title that defies every modern trend. It has no microtransactions. It has no loot boxes. It looks like it was made in the 1990s. And for the two men who built it, it was almost a career-ending disaster. The story of Factorio isn't just a success story. It is a chronicle of obsession. It involves 14-hour workdays that destroyed friendships, a crowdfunding campaign that failed so miserably the founders decided to quit, and a bank account that hit zero, twice. But they had a secret weapon, a philosophy that the rest of the gaming industry ignored. This is how a Czech programmer's obsession with efficiency created the highest-rated game in history. And it all started with a mistake. 2011, Prague. Michal Kovarczyk is a software engineer with a problem. He is bored. He discovers a Minecraft mod called Industrial Craft. It allows players to automate mining, build pipes, and construct engines. For most people, it was a fun distraction. For Kovarczyk, it was a revelation. He becomes obsessed. But playing wasn't enough. He wanted to build something better. He tells his friends he's going to make a game. But Kovarczyk had a specific personality trait, a fatal flaw, or perhaps a superpower: hyper-focus. He couldn't multitask. He hated the way schools forced students to juggle 5 subjects at once. He needed to do one thing and do it perfectly. His day job became unbearable. He clashes with a coworker. He hits a breaking point. So he does the unthinkable. He quits his stable career. He cashes out his life savings. He convinces his friend Tomasz to do the same. They moved into a shared flat with enough cash to survive for exactly 1 year. The plan was simple, naive, but simple. Build a prototype in 4 months, release it, get rich, finish the game by Christmas. They had no idea that Christmas was 7 years away. Inspired by Minecraft's creator, Notch, Kovarczyk starts coding in Java. 10 days later, he throws it all in the trash. Java was too slow. He knew, even then, that this game would require millions of calculations per second. He needed raw power. He needed C++. 90% of his experience was in C++. It was the only way to achieve the scale he dreamed of. While coding, they stumbled upon the loop. In a survival game like 7 Days to Die, the loop is loot, build, survive. Factorio was different. Mine resources. Build a machine. Now the machine mines for you. But the machine needs power, so you build a power plant. The power plant needs coal, so you build a train to get coal. The train needs tracks. It was an infinite spiral of expansion. They didn't just design the game, they became addicted to it. They would play their own prototype for 3 days straight, forgetting to eat, forgetting to sleep. Then, fueled by the addiction, they would code for 2 weeks to fix the things that annoyed them. It was organic, it was pure. But passion doesn't pay the rent. The 4-month deadline passed, then 6 months. The savings were draining. To finish the demo, they entered crunch mode. 14 hours a day, every day, for 3 months. It wasn't just physical exhaustion, it was psychological warfare. When you work on something for that long in isolation, you lose perspective. Kovarczyk began to panic. Was this game even fun? Or was it just a stupid project for 2 nerds in a basement? They were inventing a new genre. There was no market research, no guarantee. They were burning their lives away for a gamble. They needed money, fast. They turned to crowdfunding. The goal was humble, 17,000 euros. They launched the page. They uploaded the screenshots. They waited for the internet to flood them with cash. They assumed the world would just find them. They were wrong. 2 weeks in, they had raised 500 euros. Most of it came from their own friends out of pity. It was a catastrophe. The message was clear. Nobody wants your factory game. But then, a strange emotion hit them. Relief. The pressure was gone. The failure was absolute. they could finally stop working 14 hours a day. They decided to quit. They found new corporate jobs within 48 hours. They planned to coast through the last 2 weeks of the campaign, let the timer run out, and move on with their lives. Since the project was dead anyway, they made a decision that would change history. Here, they said, just take it. They offered the prototype demo to anyone who emailed them. No cost, no DRM, just take the code. And then, the internet did its thing. People played it. Despite the ugly graphics, despite the bugs, they saw the potential. Then, the miracle happened. Nathan Adams, a developer on Minecraft, tweeted about them. Suddenly, major gaming sites picked up the story. The spiritual successor to industrial craft. The campaign exploded. They went from raising nothing to raising €1,000 a day. Kovacic and Tomasz sat in their apartments screaming at the monitor. "We can do anything now," they told each other. "Nothing can stop us." They crushed their goal, raising €22,000. They were back in business. Or so they thought. Crowdfunding is a sugar rush. Eventually, the sugar runs out. A few months after the campaign, reality set in. Daily sales on their website dropped to single digits. The money from the campaign was being eaten up by server costs and living expenses. They were facing bankruptcy. Again. The solution came from a brutal insult. A friend, who knew nothing about gaming, slept over at their flat. He looked at the screen and said 3 words. "That looks awful." He was right. The game was brilliant, but it looked like a programmer's placeholder art. Tiny sprites, confusing colors. They realized they couldn't just code their way out of this. They needed style. They hired Albert, an art director who would define the game's soul. Albert didn't just make it pretty, he created a philosophy. Factorio punk. Not steampunk, not diesel punk. Something grounded, something heavy. Albert established the 45-degree projection. It wasn't just aesthetic, it was tactical. When you were managing 10,000 conveyor belts, you need a bird's eye view to spot bottlenecks. He created a workflow that is still legendary. Every object, from the smallest gear to the massive refineries, starts as a detailed 3D model in Blender. It is then rendered down into 2D sprites. This gives the game the depth of 3D with the crisp performance of 2D. They released the graphics update. Sales didn't just improve, they tripled. For the first time, Factorio wasn't just a prototype, it was a product. They were surviving. But to thrive, they needed to do something no other studio was doing. If you ask a fan why Factorio is successful, they might say conveyor belts. But if you ask a veteran, they will say one word: modding. Most developers treat modding as an afterthought, a nice bonus if the community figures it out. Woob, the studio behind Factorio, did the opposite. Kovacic built the game engine to be robust. In fact, the base game of Factorio, the campaign, the items, the biters, is technically just a mod running on top of their own engine. This means modders have almost the same power as the developers. This support went beyond just code. There are documented cases of Woob releasing patches specifically to fix bugs that only occurred in mods. They treated community creators as unpaid staff members. Because of this, when players finished the game, they didn't quit. They downloaded mods that added 500 hours of gameplay. The community kept the game alive during the quiet years. The synergy was real. The blueprint system, a core mechanic that lets you copy and paste entire factory sections, started as a user mod. Kovacic saw it, loved it, and integrated it into the base game. He didn't have an ego about it. If the community built it better, he adopted it. This turned Factorio from a game about clicking on rocks into a game about designing logic. You weren't a survivor anymore, you were an architect. By 2015, the team had grown. They moved out of the apartment and into a real office. They had money. They had a stable game. So, why weren't they on Steam? Every other indie developer rushes to Steam Early Access to cash in. Factorio waited and waited. They called it the one-wave theory. They knew that launching on Steam is a one-time event. You get one massive wave of algorithmic promotion. If you launch a broken game, you waste the wave. They refused to launch until the game was polished enough to retain players. But there was a problem. Refunds. The game was too smart for its own good. New players would load in, get overwhelmed by the complexity, and quit within 20 minutes. This was the first 5 minutes crisis. Kovacic became a scientist of frustration. He would bring in people who had never played strategy games. He sat behind them with a notebook, saying nothing, just watching them struggle. He watched them miss obvious buttons. He watched them ignore tutorials. He realized the interface was a disaster. They spent months refining just the tutorial, ensuring that the hook landed before the frustration did. In 2016, 3 years after the crowdfunding failure, they pressed the button. The one wave wasn't a wave. It was a tsunami. Factorio became the highest-rated game on Steam. It stayed there for years. With millions in the bank, most studios would sell out. They would get acquired by Microsoft or EA. They would announce Factorio 2 immediately. Woob went silent. They continued their weekly blog, Friday Facts, sharing technical details about bug fixes and optimization. But for years, the world wondered, what comes next? In 2023, the answer arrived. Factorio, Space Age. It wasn't just a DLC, it was a fundamental reimagining of the game. The price? $35. The same price as the base game. The internet raged. It's too expensive, critics shouted. And then, they played it. The expansion added over 100 hours of gameplay, and it revealed the depth of the developer's research. Kovacic's father was a scientist, and it shows. Take the planet Vulcanus. It's scorched, covered in lava, with gravity 4 times stronger than the starter planet. Or Gleba, a biological horror. Here, you don't mine stone. You harvest living tissue. The developers researched silicon-based life forms. They studied carcinization, the evolutionary theory that nature keeps trying to evolve things into crabs. This wasn't just a game map, it was a simulation of alien ecology. And Fulgora, a dead world, no resources to mine, only the scrap of a civilization that destroyed itself. You are forced to recycle the garbage of the dead to survive. It was a masterclass in environmental storytelling without a single line of dialogue. When Space Age launched in October 2024, alongside the massive 2.0 update, the player count shattered records. 118,000 concurrent players, 8 years after release. Most games are dead in 8 weeks. Factorio was hitting its peak. Today, the factory building genre is massive. Satisfactory, Dyson's Sphere program. They all owe their existence to Factorio. Even the wheel has turned full circle. The Create mod for Minecraft, one of the most popular mods today, was inspired by Factorio. The game that was inspired by a Minecraft mod now inspires Minecraft mods. But the most important part of this story isn't the code. It's the restraint. Kovacic and Tomasz stepped back. They don't write the code anymore. They are approvers. They guard the vision. They didn't chase infinite growth for the company. They kept the team small. No bureaucracy, no middle managers, just talent. Factorio is a testament to the power of doing things the hard way. They rejected early access trends. They rejected publisher money. They rejected the idea that games have to be easy to sell. They almost quit. They almost went broke. But they kept the belt moving, and because of that, the factory will grow. Forever. What part of Factorio's chaotic journey surprised you the most? Did you live through the initial crowdfunding failure? Or did you join the factory during the massive Steam boom? Let us know your story in the comments below.